go back to work on this for a while. We'll come back to it maybe in half an hour or so, but you can keep picking away at that. Again, open book, open. I don't know if you can talk to each other while I'm talking, but do what you want to. Try to get it filled out. And if we could, let's jump back. Oh, I'm supposed to be able to do this. Jump back to slide 13. If you can figure out how to do that. Look at that. Yes. All right, great. All right. Just humor me, because I'm an insecure person, basically. Does anybody remember anything from last night? And I would like to maybe ask you if you could repeat something that you maybe hadn't thought of before, or probably already knew it but forgot, but something that seemed from last night that was new or interesting. Could you, this is for my benefit, by the way, just my ego kind of thing. Yes?
I had not considered how many times the teachings in the Bible were topical.
Okay, yes.
Textual. So
Yeah, did you hear that? How many times in the Bible the teachings were topical? Right. Because when, let's say the preachers in the New Testament, Acts, for example, what were they trying to do? They were trying to change people's lives, convert them, right? So there's a point where you just aim for that. Of course, you can think of Acts 17 where Paul's talking to the Greeks. They don't even know the scripture. They don't know anything. So he has to kind of take a little different approach. Although that sermon's interesting. Nearly every phrase in there is found in the Old Testament. But he's not quoting the scripture. Where's he going? He's trying to get to the point that Jesus is going to judge the world, that he's raised from the dead and that kind of thing. That's a great comment. Yes? Okay, two more. Yes?
Teaching is an elected role, has a scope of responsibility.
Sure, like other roles in the church, in addition to elders and deacons, but other servant roles. Yes, good. Other things. Yes, Mike?
Talk about the idea of the office
Yes?
of a teacher.
Yeah.
I never really had thought about that, but certainly the language in Scripture is well along the idea of elders going in.
There is parallel language there, exactly. I think that's right. And we can see it that way. It doesn't appear to have quite the formality. When Paul addressed the church in Philippi, he doesn't mention them, but in other places he does, and he talks about it as a valuable role. Not everybody has it, so, right? Okay. Boy, that was a popular topic last night, I guess. Maybe that's good. All right. So I have another exercise for you. Again, this is a think, pair, share, if we want to stick with that terminology. Mostly think, but I really think it would help from the very beginning. Read over just a little bit and see what you think your answer would be, but you might want to work with somebody. That might be quicker to do it. If you look on the top of page 4, there's this sequence of boxes. Let me say maybe two other things by way of introduction. What's happening today is I'm kind of transitioning from what I think is pretty clear Bible teaching, lots of verses, I can prove it, to stirring in a little bit of human wisdom. I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean practical advice. You know what I mean? How you implement that. And that's the way God treats us. Here's the truth. This is what we know for sure. Now, on top of that, try to put some of your own judgment, the best practices you can, always worrying about violating the authority of the Scripture. You'll see that you're going to hear more of that today. That's one thing. And the second is we're going to start scrambling in the project, which I hope y'all did some work on last night, to get ready to teach this session. You're going to teach, hypothetically, right, on 2 Timothy 2. Does everybody remember that assignment? Okay. So I hope you're working on that. And I'm going to be flipping back and forth a little bit between that preparation and finishing out some discussion of teaching generally. So that's going to be confusing, I'm sure, but that's what we're going to do. Help me with this. There's an exercise at the top of page 4, and that is the flow of learning. And what I'd like you to do is there are A, B, C, D, E, F, 6 things, actions, steps in a process. Try to put those in the order that they most often occur in your life or in a learner's life. You can think of a kid, or you can think of a Christian trying to learn, or a student in college, or whatever. Try to put those in order and work together on that. If you want to fill them in the boxes, you can. If you just want to put the letter, that's fine too, but see if you can determine those. All right, easy? Finished? I hear people laughing and visiting. That usually means something's going on. Maybe you're... All right, easy? Y'all are not answering me. I don't... Okay, what's first? What do you got? If you have a minority opinion, I'm interested in that too. Yes. Okay, I don't know what that is, but learning facts. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't. Yes, right. Learning facts. What did you get for next? After learning facts.
Detecting relationships.
Okay, we have two opinions. We can maybe get an argument started in the class here. You really? Okay, we might have to vote. That's the only way to know the truth in a democracy, isn't it? Right?
Can I argue my...
You can. I wish you would. That'd be great.
Because when you get new information, you need to relate it to other things in order to fully understand it. So
Yes.
you need to draw comparisons and develop those relationships.
Sure.
before you-
So drawing comparison almost sounds like principles, right? But you're saying you have to kind of put those two ideas next to each other before you can say, hey, this is better than that one. And that might apply to other
And I'm
situations
also
too.
okay to be wrong as well.
That's right, yeah. Renita, you want to, no rebuttal? Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
But I could be wrong.
Sure. And I made these up anyway, so who knows? It's not. So what I'm saying is there are discrete facts. Like this is the year in which, Paul went on his second missionary journey. These are just facts you can learn. Those might include saying the books of the Bible, knowing the Bible periods, the major characters. Well, I don't even know for sure what all these crazy words mean. What is a lamentation after all, But I can learn that. But then slowly I put those facts and I say, you know what? These are somewhat related to each other. And relationships might include this happens and this causes this. This is a cause and effect relationship. Or this happened before this, right? Or this was a bad thing and this was a good thing. You understand what I mean? But from that, you start to say, I wonder if that same relationship might apply to other facts in the world. Just like this caused that, the Israelites in the time of the judges disobeyed God, and what happened to them? They would fall into the hands of their enemies. Remember, they were punished. Well, that's an interesting fact. Is there a principle behind that might apply in other situations, you see? Yes, thank you, Norm. They're all saying, yeah, I can't get... Yeah, but you see the point there. And I'm not sure there's not a lot of gray area in there, but I do think there's that... there's a next step of logic that generalizes this relationship that I've discovered. And relationships are generally something like cause and effect, before and after, good and evil, better or best, things like that. So you could do that. Okay, I'll just keep doing it. Let's get the whole thing down. Okay, what's after understanding principles? Now remember, our goal in the Great Commission is teaching them to observe, obey, So you see where we're headed with this thing, right? What's next? Okay, and that is, you know what? I should obey God, or else bad things will happen to me. Thinking of the judges, the principle in the judges. Now what's happened is I've taken an example, or even a specific command that was given to the Israelites or given to a New Testament church, and what have I done now? I applied it to me. But really, did I apply it to me yet? You understand what I mean? I've just realized, hey, this probably does apply to me. But what's the next step?
Do something.
What's that?
Do something about it.
That's right. And so in this thing, yeah, change behavior. Now that's the easiest step on the whole list, right? No, that's the hardest step. And then what's next? And this is easy because there's only one left. Yeah, develop a habit. And if you've read some of the books on habit forming and so on, but you in your own life have seen this. There may have been a time in your life when Sunday night, or maybe even wake up Sunday morning, should we go to church? It's kind of late. Kids were up late, and I don't know, it's a long way, it's raining, I kind of have a headache. And you wrestle with that, right? But you say, no, I'm resolving to go. I'm going to get up and go to worship. That's the pink step, right? I wasn't going to, but I changed my mind. I worked hard. I made a resolve. It's kind of hard to do it, but I do it, right? What happens if you do that week after week? That's right. And I don't go through that wrestling with my conscience about, well, what does the Bible say about that? I wonder if God would disapprove. You understand what I mean? I just do it. And it may even come to the point where I kind of don't remember why. I just do it. It's a habit. If you ask me, I can recall and think that through. Y'all understand that. I'm not saying it's easy to get to that, but that's how we form habits and change our lives in permanent ways, resilient ways, so that the least little temptation doesn't make me fall off the wagon if there's a particular habit or a practice that I want to do. Okay, so keep looking at this for a second. Where are children on this flow, generally? I know we got some kids class, and maybe some of you are planning to teach the second graders from 2 Timothy 2. That's going to be fun. I mean, really, I think it's cool. But where are children on this list? Yeah, so especially younger. They can learn facts, and I'm thinking in a Bible class in particular, what primarily are you doing with them is helping them memorize some things, or maybe even correlate a picture with a name, or even recite a list of things. Y'all know what I mean by that. So a lot of times they'll be learning words and concepts. My dad used to always give this example, and I love it. The kids' class, it used to be, David probably did this a long time ago, would line up all the grade school kids on the front row on Sunday evening before services. Any of y'all experienced that from a long time ago? And there'd be a singing and recitation, and who was the wisest man, and who was the strongest man, and all that. And but anyway, we'd sing, Jesus loves me, this I know for the... And so when you get done and you say to the kids on the front row, who loves you? Y'all help me out with audience participation. And they all say together, How do you know that? And what's their answer to that? They don't answer. But what's in the song? Right, but it's Yoda talk, right? This I know, or something. But at first they just learned the song, and that's great. And someday, maybe in their life, maybe not too long, they'll say to themselves, "Oh, this I know," because the Bible. Oh, that's what that means. And there's a realization of that. And so I'm not discounting the learning of facts. In fact, you need that. That's the first step. It's the foundation. And so what we're doing in the kids' classes is so valuable. And without that, it gets harder and harder to do other things when you don't even know what a judge is, or who is Israel? Where were they? When were they? What's a psalm? Who wrote them? All those are just facts. But if you don't have that, you can't go any further. Yes?
I had a 4-year-old that asked me, how do we know? I said, the Bible tells us. But how do we know? And I went, go talk to your dad.
Yeah, you're over my head. Yeah.
I wasn't done that in a 4-year-old class, but she wanted to get deep.
Yeah.
But how do we
No.
I wasn't expecting this until way later, but.
Wow. The teen devotion is going to deal with that a little bit, but I'm tempted to go into a little dissertation on that, but anyway, I'm not. But yes, exactly. And it's like you can just feel them wanting to just ease into that room of like deeper concepts, and yes.
I do think though, even with maybe the older children, like 4th, 5th grade, that we need to be careful that we're not just simply like telling them that.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. I actually think much younger than that, they can begin to see, hey, what's the principle here? Don't you see this is the same thing as happened to David? Or this is the same thing that happened in our last story? Or so you're beginning to build
and
that.
finding like we taught the Gospels, so being able to look at it and go, well, this one says this, and this one says this,
Sure.
and how do those fit together?
Right.
It's not a contradiction.
Yeah.
Because honestly, when you look at like standards for Tennessee state standards, but
Yeah.
educational standards, those are the kinds of things required in their reading classes too.
Pushing them on through to the analytical side, yes. And I would say, especially Bible teachers, aren't we all, whatever the age, trying to push down this list here? I mean, a child gets angry, they have a tantrum. That's not acceptable behavior. that's kind of down the list to begin doing a very difficult thing, which is to change my habits about losing my temper or disobeying or being dishonest. Very simple things, and yet they're hard. They're changes in behavior, and you would hope you could begin even to form habits at that age about that. Yes, I didn't intend to say that. I'm just saying kids are more up here. You'd like to think adults were more down here. The other point I was trying to make is there's a little bit of a giant base to a pyramid, really, even for adults, to learn all these basic facts, principles, and so on. And then from that, start to say, okay, how can I be a better disciple? Remember that? Disciples are about following with their lifestyle. So that's good. Okay, y'all get that idea. I'm gonna talk about the flow of learning. I just put that out as a reference point to think about. So when you're in a Bible class, it could be that the structure generally of the Bible class might be to start with some basic facts, right? Like the scripture, read the text. What does this word mean? How are they related? Start to look at some analytical processes, right? Hey, did you notice that this is the bad side and this is the good side, but some of the same words are used, or there's a reference to an Old Testament story, and here was the principle behind that story. You know what I mean? So, and then later, what would you like to end every Bible class with? This is way ideal, but what would be the best result of any Bible class?
What are you going to do different tomorrow?
Say again?
What are you going to do different?
Thank you. Exactly right. And then the ideal, which is probably never, hardly ever happens, is someone says, I have had one lady come up to me and said, I want you to know as a result of your class, I quit my job. I think, oh, what did I say? But you know, that is make a resolve. I'm going to make a change, and maybe you get to step number 5, but you hope that it sticks. And yeah, could you all see that? Well, remember, what's the Great Commission say? Teaching them to do something, observe, obey, be different as a result of that. Okay. Now, that leads me to talk about goals and objectives. I've been a consultant for companies that do strategic planning. Have any of y'all been cursed to have to go through that process in the business? Yes, thank you. My experience is that the first hour, at least, is an argument over what these words mean. Wait, your plan is wait, no, your goal is my milestone. Wait, no, you know what I mean. So we're skipping all of that. I'm going to define these 2 terms, and you just have to go with Marty's definition for the next few hours. After that, you can do whatever you want. But I need to talk about these goals and objectives specifically because I think it's a useful concept in planning a class period. I feel like I'm talking to all those people in the back, but they're mostly back there. So let's talk about what a goal and objective is. And you almost said the very words right there. A goal, in my definition, don't argue with my definition, right, is this. It's what I want the student to believe, that's in their heart, or do differently. That is a life change. And probably both, right? That is, I believe something different and I act on that because I'm convicted of it. Y'all accept that definition? Does it fit with the Great Commission Matthew account? Okay, so that's so now you're ready, I think, to see what are my goals for being up here this weekend. I mean, I'm the teacher, you're the students. What was my goal for being in this workshop? And I'm going to tell you, my goal is to change your lives. Change your lives. That is, when you leave and you go to teach a class or teach your kids or wherever setting is, you do different. I've convinced you of something to believe differently, like teaching is a position of authority and accountability and so on before God. I've taught you a bunch of facts, maybe, but then I hope you maybe are different in your life as a result of that. If not, why aren't we here? I mean, maybe we can just learn facts all weekend, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to change your life, and I know that's an exaggerated expression for it. Here's what I mean by that. I want you, if you're a teacher, to believe and act on the conviction, see that belief in there? Conviction that teaching is an authority role in the local church with spiritual purpose, with qualifications and accountability to God in particular. Have you all heard any material presented over the last, few hours that might support that as a goal on my part? Boy, yeah. Okay, just really nods would help me. I don't mean to be critical or aggressive, but yes. And now you might even understand why I chose some particular texts to show you, and why we talked about them and maybe read some verses and so on. Do you see that? Why would I pick those? Because when I'm gone, I want you to be different. And I want you to be acting on this. Here's another one. Here's another goal. I would like for you, if you're a teacher, to plan class periods that are matched first, well, not first, but both to the student needs and the Bible teaching, with the goal of making them different, right? You'll be different as a teacher, and the goal is to make them different. Now, that reminds me of 2 Timothy 2:2, doesn't it? Able men, able to teach others also. Remember this chain of thing. We're changing lives in what we're doing. Y'all accept those as goals? Is that something I want you to think or do differently, is what I guess I'm asking, okay? Third one, for teachers, I want you to plan and incorporate classroom activities and teaching methods, not just to be weird and different, but that will improve with goals of improving retention, deepening comprehension, increasing commitment, giving me feedback on whether we got that or not on the student accomplishment. Now, so one more, and that is for everybody, for the disciples. This is my goal. I hope I'll change your life this weekend. I would like that when I'm gone, as a result of, in the end of this workshop, the participants will participate eagerly in Bible classes, following the teacher's leads with the goal to make personal changes. I'm here to find out how I can change. Is that what a disciple does? Would that change the complexion of our classes if we all came thinking, I got to find something here that will make me better as a disciple of Christ? Could you imagine attending a class that way? Not just get through it, don't answer a question wrong and get embarrassed. That's not it. It's to be different as a result of that. Okay, now here's my point about goals. Are these measurable as a goal? By me, let's say, because I'm the teacher. I got to measure you. I got to decide if I've succeeded or not by the end of the weekend. Are they measurable by me?
Yes.
You think so? All right. Who wants to disagree with Norm? Because I'm going to. Yes.
If the goal has changed,
Okay. Is that what you meant? Is you can see if there's a change or not?
well, just on face value too, is their participation measured?
Oh, yes, for the fourth one, yeah. Maybe by this afternoon, somebody will answer a question quickly or something. I don't know, but yeah. Sorry, finish what you were...
Well, if the ultimate goal, like on the second one especially, which I think is maybe an overall encompassing goal and change, I'm hoping that is the takeaway for all of us.
Oh.
You're not going to be here to monitor that and check.
That's kind of my point, but you're exactly right. I will see that, and just as a person who's convicted, I need to get to services more regularly, you know. You hope you'll see that in their life. But certainly for convictions, beliefs and things like that, it's hard to measure. It's hard for me, no way for me to measure unless I sneak back up here, you know, in a few months and see if anything's different. And I always imagine that I have in my car this device that looks like an old-timey woman's hairdryer in the beauty salon. Y'all remember those? Do they still have those? Right. But I put it over somebody's head, and it's a belief-o-meter, you know, and I put it on here at the beginning, and it reads like 17.5. And then at the end of the class, I put it on, and it reads 39.7, right? We just don't have that. I can't see inside your heart. I think we all can see inside our own heart in some ways, but I can't do that as a teacher. So goals, I'm saying, are not really observable by the teacher during the class period. They're just not. I have, on occasion, seen a student get real excited about something, and I'm hoping that's evidence that their conviction is deeper, or they've thought of something that they can do differently as a result of a study, but that didn't happen very often. So that leads me to the other end of the spectrum in some ways, and that is objectives, right? Now, objectives are almost the opposite end in every way. Objectives are observable, down here, they're measurable behavior. Measurable means I can give you a quiz, I can ask you a question, I can ask you to stand up and recite from memory, you know what I mean? These are things I can observe, and there's something you weren't able to do at the beginning, but you can do now at the end. You see what that is? But, okay, so they are accomplished during the class period, and I always use the phrase, at the end of the class period, the student will be able to, and then fill in the blank. That helps me a lot, okay? Look carefully at the fine print here. Of course, the objectives should be one for, or many to one, supporting the goals. You see that? Why am I doing them? I'm trying to get to the goal. Even though I can measure the objectives, though. They describe a student activity or ability. I've seen objectives written for various age groups in different congregations and other places, and they often read something like, and this class will cover this or that story. What's wrong with that? At least Marty's definition, I'm not, nothing sinful about it. How does that not meet this criteria?
It's reflecting a change.
Okay, that's right. It doesn't do that in the students, right? And who actually are we looking at when we say cover this material? This teacher or the student? The teacher, right. So they may have read the workbook right out loud and all the students were there and they heard it, but it's not a change in their behavior. It's just what this teacher did during the time. So it needs to be something that describes what a student learner can do differently than before. It represents a positive change. Obviously, that's obvious. It's something that was good to learn to do, not a bad thing to learn to do. It's measurable and observable by the student and the teacher. I remember, no, it doesn't matter where I learned all this. In writing technical specifications, you often write a test plan alongside of it. And a test plan really just imagines, it's a thought experiment to say, is there some way to measure this thing that is a specification for this device or whatever? And that's the way. I think you invent in your mind, is there some way I could measure this? If the answer is yes, then it's measurable. Doesn't mean you have to measure it, but it's there. It's achievable by the student within the class period. So there might be a course objective that by the end of the class, we will all know the Bible periods, or we can recognize and recite the kings looking at their pictures, or something like that. It might take several weeks to do that. Memory verses might be in that category, right? There's student achievements that you do over a period of time, but for the most part, I try to limit mine to the very class period, okay? So now you're probably wondering, Marty, what are your objectives for this weekend? And you've seen these already. And I hope now you can look at these with this critical eye of what is an objective supposed to be. Remember, it's during the class period, it's a student behavior, a change in their abilities, it's something that's measurable. Those are kind of the key ideas, all right? So let's see how we're doing. Can you list and describe 3 examples of Bible study in the Bible? Can you do that? You just nod up and down. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, just nod your head. Okay, and then contrast preaching and teaching. Remember that from the Great Commission accounts? List 4 scriptural qualifications for Bible teachers. And truthfully, I haven't actually told you that, and you haven't even told me what you came up with, but I'm presuming that you came up with 4 and you remember them, probably better, as I said last night, than anything else I've seen. List 3 texts that indicate teaching is an office, so we already talked about it. Apparently that was a memorable thing from yesterday. All right, now, can you list the 6 steps in the flow of learning? Now, I could have just read them to you, right? But what did I do instead? I'm in my meta mode now. Instead of just reading the 6 to you, what did I do as a teaching technique?
Make us reason.
Yeah, you had to kind of sort it out for yourself and think it through and argue even. There's nothing bad in that. That's the idea. Though that's putting the concepts more firmly in there, and we're trying to detect relationships and so on. Okay, do you see that? Now, the next one. Can you recognize a measurable, achievable class period objective and critique one that's poor? I don't know. I don't think you know yet. So, let's do that, and let's see. Here's some objectives. I want you to critique them, and I put the little hint box up there. Cover the 2nd chapter of 2 Timothy. What do you think as an objective? If you say good, say why. If you say bad, say why. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. That's going to inhibit answers. Okay, just yes or no, good or bad. I hear a yes. I hear a no. It's really not about the students. It's kind of saying the teacher is going to, and I could read the chapter and I'm done if you want to just be legalistic about the exact objective. Yes, but I'm afraid a lot of our objectives are really describing content, not activities, not abilities, not changes in student behavior at the end. So that's okay. Number 2, list 3 images of service found in chapter 2 of 2 Timothy. Now, here's an easy way to do it. If you just say these words before the objective, it kind of almost answers itself. At the end of the class period, the student will be able to, and then read that. Okay, I'm getting a yes here. No, yep, no no's. Okay, yes. How would I know that? Is that measurable? Could I actually give a quiz? Not that I would ever give a quiz on something, right? And you would have to recall those 3 images from 2 Timothy 2. Got it? Okay, let's keep going. Take a test on the kings of Judah. Now, that's student activity, isn't it? Who's taking the test? What do you think as an objective? I'm getting a no. Why do you say no? Yeah, right. It doesn't say pass it, right? In fact, I think they could probably take the test without any help. Okay, so yes, exactly. However, if you're doing a lesson plan, yeah, take the test is, at minute 16 to minute 20. Okay, I understand that's a placeholder of activity, but it's not really an objective in this sense. List the kings of Judah and Israel and the years of their reign. At the end of the, okay.
Well, not reasonable, but
Okay, so remember, one of the criteria is you can do it in the class period. But if you expand it to be at the end of this, 13 weeks, we're going to work on it. We'll learn 3 or 4 each time. We'll recite them every time. Then it becomes a measurable behavior, and it's a good objective, maybe for a whole course rather than just a class period. Here we go. Define Gnosticism. At the end of the class period, the student will be able to define Gnosticism. I'm getting a yes over there and a yes over here. Any no's? Boy, that seems awful general. Seems awful complicated. Why do you say yes? I shouldn't make people who are brave enough to answer defend their own answers. Why do you think he said yes?
It is something measurable. You could see that they can write something about Gnosticism.
Okay.
But it's you have to question, what's the point of that?
That's right. Notice it does not say understand Gnosticism. You see that? Is it possible that at the beginning, the introductory class period, I say at the end of the class period, I want you all to be able to define Gnosticism, and here's the definition I want you to remember. That okay? Could the students accomplish that objective? Will they understand Gnosticism? Well, no, that's going to come in lesson 10 when we get to 2 John or something. You know what I mean? And we begin to, oh, that's what those definitions mean. But if I've said, I want you to learn this definition, and maybe over time we'll begin to understand it, right? So you've kind of done that too today. I mean, I've given you a definition of a goal or objective. We're still working to understand what do I mean by that, but you can recite those. Y'all okay with that? So I do think there's a place, especially in adult learning, where you're working your way down the flow and you're not quite to the, understanding principles or whatever, but you just memorize something. A little bit like Jesus loves me, this I know because the Bible tells me so, hoping that later, it'll all make sense. Right? Is there a place for that? I mean, we memorize text. How many times, if you've memorized a Bible verse, does that verse come back and I never saw that before, but it's been right there. I've been able to recite it. I think there's a place for that. And I think it's helpful, especially in technical learning. Again, I'm a physics teacher. We would learn definitions of particular physical quantities. I don't think the students had a clue at first, what does this mean? But over time, we learned to use it in equations. We learned the units. We learned the physical phenomena that goes with it. Understand the magnitude of God's grace. Okay, should we start voting on these? Yes. How many say yes to that? How many say no to that? Okay. The no's are above the ayes. I don't have a grace, beliefometer right on that, so it's not really a measurable thing. Anytime it says understand, I always have a worry with that. That is one of my goals, of course. I want the students to have a deeper understanding or something like that. But I can't measure it. And all I can do is support it with factual and other kinds of learning, okay? Whoops.
You can support that goal with good objectives.
Say again?
You can support that goal with good objectives.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to say in all of this. I hope you're seeing that. We don't throw the goals away. Oh, that's really my purpose. That's my goal, if you want to say that. Right, is to change people's lives. But you You can't just do that. You have to start with facts and relationships and principles. And a lot of times, especially for deeper convictions or changing habits, a person has to wrestle with that for a while. That's been my experience in my life. I don't know, maybe y'all change quickly as soon as you hear anything new, but not me. It's a very difficult thing. It takes some time. Trace Paul's third journey on a map. List 2 potential personal applications of admonitions to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2. Anytime you see the word list, that's a good sign. That doesn't mean they've made the personal applications. It may not even mean they understand them. But if I can remember the list, maybe I'll kind of like, it'll dawn on me one day, yeah, I could do that, and so on. So you get the idea. List 3 parallels between 2 Timothy and Titus. Remember, list is, because that's measurable. Be less fearful and more evangelistic. Good goal, isn't it? And you can imagine some of the other objectives above supporting that. You get the idea. List 3 reasons that Christians should not be anxious. Yeah, I haven't changed anything, but it might support the idea of not being as fearful or being more evangelistic, right? How about recite 2 Timothy 2:2? Yeah, we can measure that. Okay, y'all are getting the idea. Where are objectives on this flow? I'm sorry, let's start with goals. Where are the goals on this flow of learning? Roughly. Goals. Yeah, goals. I said objectives first, I'm sorry. Where are the goals?
Change behavior.
Yes, change behavior, down at the bottom. Where are the objectives on this flow? They're near the top. Although, it seems to me that if you had one of those objectives like, if I read this chapter and I wrote down on a piece of paper changes that I could make in my life, you see, I'm almost to step number 3 there. Maybe I am on step 3. I haven't changed anything, but at least it's dawned on me that these facts and these relationships and principles lead me to say, you know what? Yeah, I could make that change. I haven't done it. I think that could be in the sense of listing it or stating it or something like that, a measurable objective within a class period. But you just count on the person really being a disciple to carry that forward. Okay, that's the little module, so you'll understand the structure of kind of how we're going to do this and how you kind of write down your plan here. So here's a way to think about it. Again, I'm here to change your life. That's going to be represented by this disciple that's over on the right-hand side of the chart. But I don't want to just base it on my best judgment or human wisdom or anything. I really do want to root it in God's Word, in the meaning of a real text, and not twisting the meaning to say what I want it to say, but it really is in there, right? Well, now where do I start? And I'm a teacher now. And I'm looking at the student, and I'm thinking they need to change their lives in some ways. I hope you all thought about that last night. That was the last question in the assignment. What are some applications from 2 Timothy 2, right? Where do I start? Well, I mean, we're Bible studiers, right? So where do we obviously kind of think about starting, right? I'm going to think about starting with the message and meaning of the text, for sure. Well, okay, let's say we're covering 2 Timothy 2. Can I cover everything in that text in this 45-minute period? How might I choose what to cover and what not to cover? I mean, what are some things you might think about?
Who your audience is.
Thank you. That is, let's go look over here on the right-hand side. What are they good at? What are they not so good at, right? What dangers do they not face now, but they will in about a year or two? And they need to be prepared. You know what I mean? That kind of question. You see, I'm looking at both ends from the very beginning, really. And I'm reading the text, and actually for me, I have trouble with rabbit holes, right? Hey, is that the same Greek word as, or that sounds like a quote from, or is this word ever used in this? You know what I mean? And I'm not sure those are relevant, but I can't stop myself from going this way and that way. But in the end, what I really should be doing is saying, okay, what in here would have a change, of effect on the students that I'm aware of? And what does that imply about your relationship with the students? Yeah. I mean, don't show up from out of town like, you know, and pretend you know this group. But no, seriously, in your adult and especially kids' Bible classes, do you need to know them? Their personalities, their family situations, their abilities, their disabilities, other things like that. That's a key thing. And where they're going in life. Where are they headed? Where are they going to school next year? What are their challenges, maybe even that exist in their own homes? And that helps, I think, decide what to do. So here's kind of a picture. When I first look at a text, and there's stuff in there I don't really understand. Here's an example. If you read 2 Timothy 2, did you notice a poem or a song in there? A hymn of some kind? Did you notice that? I don't know how your printing showed that or not. Maybe yes. Well, there is one. Maybe you can find it. You don't have to look at it now. I don't understand that. I mean, I understand all the English words, and I kind of understand the meaning, but I can't quite make sense of that in the context of what Paul is telling Timothy. I'm sure it made some sense, but okay, so am I going to spend a lot of time on that in class? I probably already spent too much now just mentioning it, right? For now at least, I can't teach that. I don't know what it's saying, right? And I can talk about it, but I think the more I talk about it, the more I'm going to draw student attention and use time that I don't really need to spend, all right? A second thing, there are certain things the students can't understand, whatever age they are, wherever they are in their maturing into the image of Christ. There's things they don't understand, and I know them and I understand what they can and can't handle. Third, there's their spiritual needs, which is probably the big thing. That's what's pulling me to decide what to cover in this text. And then finally, there's the reality that, I only have 45 minutes. And whoever, the elders or somebody, has said that's all we're going to spend on this. And they've left it to my judgment and authority to decide what to leave out. And so I have to do that. So there's a limitation there. So what you have is a series of filters so that everything in the text, which might be fun, might be edifying, it might be, what's the word I'm trying to think of, a religious ritual, make me feel like I'm doing God's will to read it, study it and all that, verse by verse, word by word, cross-reference by cross-reference and all that. But I can't, for lots of reasons. So as a teacher, I'm deciding what to cover and what not. And that's a little bit the point of that exercise yesterday about having 21 verses, and we covered them so fast. How did we do that? Well, I only wanted to cover the things relevant to our study this weekend. There's a lot more in there we could talk about. You all with me on this? I thank you for nodding so supportively. Yeah, okay, you get the idea. Yes?
Derail your flow here.
Please derail me.
With almost any class, there's going to be a gradient of
I know.
needs and understanding and prioritization, and I feel like sometimes there's a group that so desperately needs a message, but may be very difficult for the other portion of the class to pick up and implement, or maybe even toes being stepped on as we're encouraging that other group.
Toes being stepped on meaning you might even upset someone, right? Y'all want to help me answer this question? You hear what he's saying? Because up here, when I say student spiritual needs, right, and the student's abilities, that looks like it's a monolithic answer for the whole class. I mean, they're all the same, right? There's a model student and everyone's just like that. And that's exactly not true. It's almost the other extreme. And especially if you have fewer and fewer kids in your classes, you're going to have a second grader and a fourth grader, perhaps, or a reader and a non-reader. A lot of things where you have a broad spectrum, even of Bible background, even of self-discipline, and academic, writing, other skills that you might be counting on. You guys are experienced teachers. What would you do with that? I have a magic wand. Did I leave that?
I think
So.
asking application questions, well, I mean, in the delivering of material, making sure you're diversifying the way that you are delivering the material, but then when you are following up with some of the more deeper kind of connections, like rephrasing questions in different ways and making sure that you're asking questions that are applicable to each student. So that gets back to knowing.
That's right.
Your students.
And knowing the diversity. I don't know if you can hear what she's saying. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. It sounds like you're saying you're kind of teaching to all levels, or at least multiple. Maybe not all, but you're trying to, which means some of what you say will go over the heads of some. You don't want to make them uncomfortable. Now, that's a very good point, where you just left the kid behind and they're lost and they're frustrated, maybe result of how they've been reared, they're angry, or they act out in some way. You want to obviously try to avoid that. Another value, of course, of having two teachers instead of one, or more than 2 if you're getting up to the 10 and 12 students in a small class. Hey, I used to teach math. I know about teaching people with different levels of ability, but I never solved it, but I just know about it. I've had that experience. So that's one thing. There may be a sense of priority. Like if there's a deep bleeding wound that needs to be addressed, you might just want to say, I've got to address this. Any of the others either left behind or bored to tears. Either way, there is a kind of a sense of priority. If you know about that, that's probably a rare situation. Other ideas, this is good. Teaching to multiple levels, which means one activity might be aimed and everybody succeeds and everybody feels good about that, but here's another one that pushes a little bit. I can think of one other idea of it.
And if you're having to triage, right?
Yes.
I think also keeping the cohesiveness of the class is also important. So trying to tie what this student is struggling with to something that maybe the model student may also struggle with, and saying, hey,
Yeah, y'all are alike.
Yeah, you actually have
Don't
common
exaggerate the differences, yes. I think another way, and this can be done carefully, but I think it can be helpful, depending on the relationship between the kids, is you can pair them up by ability. So the team itself succeeds, whereas the one kid who's on the team maybe wasn't as big a contributor, but he's watching in the sense of a colleague or role model how this thing was solved. If you've got a question to try to answer, look up in the Bible, whatever. He could maybe do it after he or she sees it done by somebody else, right? So pairing up, not that we would ever pair up in an adult class and talk about stuff, right? I mean, I think it works at all levels. And if you have a class where you have some new converts and some people that have a rough background or whatever, who would you love to see them sit by? Especially if you're going to do group activities. I'm sorry, maybe y'all will never do those, but if you were going to, that's who I want, Deacon so-and-so, could you go sit by that lady over there? Or his wife, have her go sit. Can you imagine that happening so that when you have a little group exercise, you look at the text, and that person is looking in the index to see where Leviticus actually is in the Bible, but there's someone there who can show them, turn their Bible, and make that happen. So that's another thing I always think about is teaming a little bit. Yeah, Norm?
Just an observation, maybe the next time you teach that particular text, all those filters change, and you may have a totally different outcome.
Why?
Because your understanding has maybe changed.
You like to think, yeah.
The student's ability.
Can everybody hear what he's saying?
And of course, their spiritual needs will be different because it's a different class.
Yeah. I hope you heard that. I'm going to paraphrase because I want to say a little bit more about that. Is it possible that the next time you teach this class, maybe even with the same people in it, that it's a different set of filters, or the filters act differently, right? In technical terms, right? I hope so, because I hope they understand more. And guess what? I don't have to cover the stuff I covered before. And I'll tell you what else. You should change out the students. Will this change? Of course it will, right? And that's why I worry a little bit about set curriculum with set activities that you're going to do year after year. I love the idea. In fact, I saw the notebook that, I heard there were 2 Emilys that work on stuff like that here, whoever they are. You need that. What is the material I'm supposed to be covering? But from there, it's the work of the teacher, and perhaps on a class-by-class basis to say, what are our objectives this year for this class, right? And what activities then will support those objectives for these kids, who, by the way, just studied this, somehow or another. Y'all with me on that? And so I've always worried a little bit about, pushing for a common, I guess we call it curriculum. I don't know what that word means exactly because I don't know education stuff. But yes, I think all studying the same thing has all these virtues for family study and integrated kind of church understanding. But and we have on our website at Embry Hills, I think we have maybe 1,000 different adult class materials. Why do we have so many? Because we always redo it when the next time you teach it. This time it's for a high school class. This time it's for a side study, of kind of mature people. This time it's for the Hispanic group. So it's, everyone's different. But anyway, yes.
Do you have any advice on how to evaluate spiritual needs when you're teaching a large group, like an auditorium?
I do, but it's not very good. I was going to say a little bit more about the foundational knowledge. And I was going to do that in the flow of learning, but I guess I just forgot, but whatever. I do think there's a place at the very top for learning the facts and relationships and maybe even principles at a rudimentary level. In fact, you read a verse yesterday in your qualification of teacher's exercise. You remember Hebrews chapter 5 or 6, it's right between there. What does it say? By reason of time you ought to be teachers, which time is a qualification perhaps. But the disqualification of a teacher is you have need that someone teach you the elementary principles. And he even lists them, like washing and repentance of dead works and stuff. I think there's a foundational knowledge, and I think it is the role of the church to have survey classes, for example, that really are primarily just give me the framework again. Remind me, who are the minor prophets? They were the short guys, right? Is that right? Or, where are they in history? And, how does that work? And what are the periods? And those, y'all see what I mean? I think there's a place for that. And maybe there's a place for having that for some of the church members who need that and others not. So your question, I'm not answering it. I'm just saying I wanted to say more about that. The better your foundational knowledge, the quicker you can go through the flow of learning. Because I read a verse and now I understand principles that I'm already applying, even if I've never really paid attention to that verse before. I know we had a New Testament survey, probably ill-advised, but we taught it in the auditorium. And so, silly Marty gave a pre-quiz. And it was going to be the final exam, too. And it was 2 pages, single space, fill in the blank, matching, identify what book this verse quotation comes from. You know what I mean? I didn't expect most of the people to do very well. And I was going to take them up, anonymous. I did have them fill in a box that said, how long have you been a Christian, right? And how long have you been a member at Embry Hills? Just because I thought there'd be some cool statistics, that's just me, but anyway, but anonymous. And I think over half they weren't even filled out. And some of the ones that were, shocking, disappointing to me, but I do think once we get used to it and we get over the shock and all that, I think a pretest is a really good way to do that. Probably not in a big auditorium class, with people who, have not taken a quiz for the last 50 years, I've been out of school, but in the high school class for sure. And take them up and read them and see, they already know this stuff, or they don't have a clue, or something like that. That's one idea. Any other ideas? He's asking, how do you know where they are? That's a formal way. Can you think of an informal way? Hey, let's have a relationship. Hey, I got to teach your class. Have you all ever studied this? What do you know about it? There's a way to do that investigation beforehand. Yes. These are good. This is a great discussion. This is way better than anything I was going to present.
When a teacher allows for feedback, and they ask open-ended questions, they're gauging where the class is at on the topic.
Yeah.
And if you were just to present the material as discourse for 45 minutes,
right.
You're going to have a hard time understanding, did that resonate? Was there a disagreement? Were there different ideas on that? So allowing for building time in for that discussion can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Maybe I haven't built time in enough for this, but this is good. But you can easily be fooled in a collective setting, like I have been here. I'm thinking these people don't even understand what I'm talking about because nobody will answer me. Well, that's not a fair conclusion. I know it's wrong, in fact. But you see, you can misjudge, or the teacher's pet student answers all the questions and you think they got it. That got me in math class all the time. There's some kid who already knows it all, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking I'm teaching anything and I'm not, But yes, exactly that, build that in. That's one reason I kind of like the quiz. It's somewhat private. It can come to me directly. I'm not trying to shame anybody or present all the scores or anything for everyone, but it helps me know. But then again, you're limited to factual knowledge on that, right? You're not really going to be able to assess how deep you believe it, if you struggle with this. You're not going to get any of that on a quiz, I don't think. So, y'all that are going to be in my devotion this afternoon, be prepared. I don't see anybody. I'm going to try to do some of that at the beginning. I don't know if it'll work or not. But this is a great discussion. Okay, so we dealt with differences of ability. Probably didn't answer that real well. We kind of dealt with how do you know where they are at the beginning. But I'm telling you, I think that's a high proportion of a teacher's value is to be able to do those things. That's where the skill and practice and other things come in, even with the best, as they say, best laid plans that are there. By the way, I'll use this metaphor. I usually use it in our men's workshop when we're preparing to teach a segment. The guys understand it, maybe the women will too. I think making your teaching plan, your class period plan, is a little bit like designing a play in a football game. Okay? The guys can nod for that, right? You have X's and O's. And what's going to happen as soon as you get up to the line of scrimmage, to those X's, which are on the other side? What's that? They're not where they're supposed to be, right? And so as soon as the ball is snapped, all kinds of adjustments have to be made. But it is true, though, that without the framework of what you were planning to do and who every man was supposed to block and the pattern that the receiver was supposed to run and the timing that the quarterback had as he stepped back into the pocket, without that plan in place, I'm pretty sure the play is going to be a disaster. But even with that plan, there's got to be all kinds of adaptation. But I'm building on the framework of design play. That metaphor, it doesn't prove anything. It just helps me kind of picture what I'm doing. You know, after a class, I'm thinking, that didn't go like I thought it did, but I was close to the plan. I think we made, 8 yards instead of 15, but okay, it's, that's a way to think about it. Ladies, was that offensive? You kind of get the idea. There's probably a better metaphor, but that I can't think of. All right. I think we're ready for a break. I don't mean get up, but change the topic. Yes.
Sorry. So going back.
You want me to go back? Go
yeah,
back. Okay.
The whole idea of the teacher's understanding. I think it's important that, because there's obviously parts of Scripture that I don't understand, and
No.
I think
Yeah.
it's really important that we're honest with even kids. Like, this is something that I'm not 100% sure what it means, because I feel like the minute that we step into, even if we're not even trying to over-explain it, but just pretend like we know what we're talking about, their baloney meter is gonna go off, and they're not gonna trust anything else that you say. So I think it's really important to at least be honest and open with the kids when we're like, yeah, this is something that I still struggle with in terms of understanding what this passage
Right.
means. And-
Or
there's
I never thought about that before.
Right.
Yeah. Do you see there are two kind of incentives at competition? One is I want to be perceived as the expert, the authority, the place they can go to find answers. Right. On the other hand, I don't want them to perceive me as hypocritical and puffed up about what I know when I really don't know that. That's a real good observation. I think in the long run, maybe in the moment, you lose credibility. I mean, you don't know, you're the teacher, and you don't know the answer to this, but in the long run, man, especially as parents, please, as parents, you got a long time to make up for that, right? To go look up an answer, and the last thing you want is for them to discover that you've been saying things you don't know or that are not right. Yeah.
Kids also need to understand that they will be learning, even in the same passage, all their lives. And so if they see that in us, then
That's good.
they get that.
Great, thank you.
idea.
So there's an implicit message in saying, I don't know, but I need to look into that. What have they learned from that? From the authority figure in the room is that, yeah, thank you, yeah. Yes?
That kind of goes along with the repeating of teaching certain topics, where if we have a set curriculum that you're going to teach again.
Yes.
later. I know for me as a teacher, I never teach it the same way.
Of course, because you got different students, you know more yourself, all that, yes. That's Norm's point. And not only that, so I did teach for 6 years, which means there was a course or two I taught probably some of them 10 or 12 times because it was, semester system. And the worst job I ever did was when I went in the class thinking, oh, I've already taught this before. And I'd get in the middle of a problem and I'd think, what? Oh man, I don't remember, let's see. And, oh, never mind. But as a math teacher, when you make a mistake in front of the class, they fall out of their chairs. And, well, you can't do it. There's no way we can. It's kind of it's a disaster. That's the side point. In the Bible class, we're going to all make mistakes and admit it. But yes, right, exactly. Yes. And that is a value of teaching time after time, is that you grow. and the skills you have in assessing student ability, dealing with multiple capabilities, and even understanding the text yourself. These are great. Okay, now I'm scrambling into a little bit here, the background of that we want to understand to teach our lesson on 2 Timothy 2. So I'm going to spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes on that. And you did your do-it-yourself background study. Did you finish that, or you want a few more minutes? I have $20 for whoever got them all right. No, I can't do that. Can't do that. At some of these Bible camps, I figure since it's a camp and not a church building, I can do something like this. I do hand out candy to the boys who come up with really good comments or good questions. Like even especially if I don't know the answer, you get candy. Actually, use Smarties. You can figure why I do that. Smarties. Anyway, I can't do that. We're not doing that today. But let's see if we can come up with the answer. How many think you got them all already? Know them all? Do you want more time? 5 more minutes. Thanks, Norm. I do think you'll remember them longer if you discover it yourself. That's my goal. My purpose. All right, 2:10. We'll answer. The hard part might be the references. You know what I mean? If you're not getting there and it's almost 2:10, we'll give you the references in a minute. But if you know the answer, that's good enough. Again, ask your neighbor. I'm suggesting this. David's right down here. He probably knows all of these. Come ask him. No, we're trying to answer these questions. They're not exactly questions, but they kind of are. I mean, everybody's trying to find the answers in their Bible. If you need to get up, to David's point, that's fine. We will take a break by 2:30, commitment. And I need some water. Two more minutes. All right. It isn't my goal this weekend so much to teach the background of the two epistles to Timothy, but I wanted to try to quickly get a foundational background so when we start talking about the lesson, chapter 2, it can be fit into this background. I'm going to do the meta discussion in just a minute. What about the exercise we just did? Now, last night we had an exercise where you were looking very carefully at particular verses for a particular thing. What was different about this exercise that you did? Do it yourself, background in Timothy.
It's almost reversed.
How is it reversed? Yes, thank you.
This is almost, these are the answers, it's almost like playing Jeopardy.
Yes, right.
The answers, and you're looking at
Yeah,
the reference.
that's right. Is that a skill that you might need as a Bible student? Yeah, I think the other is a skill too. I'm sometimes shocked when I'll say, in a class, even adults, and I'll say, all Scripture is profitable for what? And we're open to the text. And nobody knows what to do. You know what I mean? And even sometimes they'll say, look at verse 16 or whatever it is. I think there's a skill, and I think we're losing it in our culture for whatever reason, to actually evaluate a text with patience and diligence. Y'all can agree with me or not, that's a social statement, I shouldn't have made it. But I do think the smartphone and the TikTok and all those kind of things have inhibited our abilities. Are you agreeing?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I answered all of the questions with ChatGPT.
So-
After I legitly answered them, I just wanted to see what Chat would give me, and it gave me
I'd
all
never thought about ruling that out as a... So I'll just say, in the last month, I've actually taught 2 men's sessions, guys, 20 guys and a few more up in New York, on how to study the Bible. And you know the elephant in the room, right? Everybody knows what the elephant in the room was. That is, we didn't talk about it, but it really probably needed to be addressed. Was AI, yeah. And I can kind of give the answer that I gave in that case, but I was about to make a point which almost now falls flat, and that is, yes, there's one skill, which is be able to read a text for meaning, right? Those are verbal skills that I wish we taught better in our schools, but we don't, so we just got to help. Maybe we need to practice that in the Bible class, especially looking at Bible texts. That's the first exercise yesterday. This one's a little different, and that is using the tools. It may be marginal notes, it may be just general context to scan a text and find the information in the Bible. That's a different skill. Maybe we'll never need it again because we'll just ask ChatGPT. I mean, kind of the elephant in the room, which I addressed in these sessions. I'm not sure I'm right. I don't really know. And that is, you really need to learn to do it before you automate it and skip over it. And I've heard of some experts in education say, you need to learn to write the first draft yourself. And then after that, get whatever help you need. But the idea is there's a skill you're automating or accelerating or something, but you need to have the skill to start with before you go bypassing all of that. So the way you did it was perfect.
I was just sitting here thinking that I wish I had a Bible dictionary, just not AI.
Yes, yes.
Like that, but just
Right.
a dictionary.
Thank you. Can you imagine a course, a junior high or high school class? And I actually just did this. We had a class on giving short talks a couple of weeks ago. And I had kind of senior kids, 10, 11th, and 12th grade, the ones that were pretty talented. And I just brought a whole bunch of old books that they'd never seen before. Have you ever seen a Strong's, expository, exhaustive, exactly, dictionary of English words? They'd never seen that. They were amazed. That guy cataloged every word in the whole Bible. I had the most fun at that. And then I gave them, they had a 45-minute study period, and they just, so here, you're going to give a talk on this particular text in Luke. Go find background on the Sadducees or on this or that, laws of leprosy, or whatever the story was. Can you imagine a class for junior high and high where they were required? Maybe you don't even use class time, but you could at least introduce the tools and the skills to do that. A lot of them knew all about Bible Hub, Bible Gateway, Net Bible, and all of that, but they'd never actually seen a Strong's or a Vines, right, or a actual commentary, a pulpit commentary, something like that. Anyway, I'm way off topic, but listen, those those are valid skills that kids need, especially as they get older, and I think that would be a nice study to do that. All right, let's do these quickly. Hometown passage. 17. Second journey, Paul passing through. Okay, keep going. Journey. I already said it. Second journey, and that's Acts 17. That's not right, is it? That should be Acts 16. 17 is where they're in Thessalonica, right. He comes in 14, first journey, stoned and left for dead. 16 is where he picks up Timothy. Okay, there you go. See there? Use old material and you don't look at, okay. Lois and Eunice, 2 Timothy 1. Timothy's family religious situation, where would you learn about that? 16 again, and what was it? Apparently not a Jew, he was not circumcised, yes. His job and location in 1 Timothy, where was Timothy? Ephesus, good. How do we know that? It says it in 1 Timothy 1, right? I left you in Ephesus. What was his relationship with, and by the way, look up the word teacher. That is, he's called a teacher many times, right? I mean, there is preach the word, 2 Timothy, but here, teach these things, right? And so on. So there is this didasko word that describes his task. His relationship with Paul at the time of the writing of 2 Timothy. He's his child in the faith. We'll see that in the chapter we're going to teach. He starts by saying, my son. Other places, my true son, right? Paul references him in Philippians, so a lot of things like that. He's a son. Paul's personal situation when 2 Timothy was written. And what else? Yes, in prison, and the time of my departure is at hand, right? So he's nearing death. Journey on which Paul first visited Ephesus. Now that's a trick one, just to see if you could find that. That's a little hard one. What journey did Paul first visit Ephesus? It was the very end of the second, right. I get the impression in the second that he was headed across Asia Minor for Ephesus, but he had a vision of a guy wearing a t-shirt that said Macedonia, right? And that Macedonian man said, come help us. So he didn't go to Ephesus, he went up to Macedonia. And then, but on his way home, leaving Corinth, goes to Ephesus and then finishes. He's only there for a few weeks. Don't know, maybe the church was established, so yes. Potential issues that Timothy might be wrestling with. And now let's talk about 2 Timothy, although include everything. What do you think Timothy would, as a background for chapter 2 we're going to teach, what would you want your class to know that Timothy might be wrestling with? False teachers. That's definitely the message in 1 Timothy. It starts with that. I'm leaving you in Ephesus. I always wonder, why did Paul run away and leave poor Timothy there with all those false teachers? But he said, so you can charge me and not to teach that, right? So, yeah, what else? False teachers. And by the way, it's pervasive, isn't it? All the doctrine, even in this chapter, saying the resurrection has already come, things like that. Yeah. Yes, there's an implication, especially in the first chapter of 2 Timothy, that he said, do not be ashamed, and God's not given a spirit of fearfulness. I know it's a little bit of a leap to say that, but if you combine that with a lot of other things, like, let your progress be evident to all, and stir up the gift that's in you. It's suggesting he might not be doing that, And by the way, is it Epaphras is not ashamed of my bonds? So there's some implications that might be a problem. Timothy, a very healthy man, right? He had something, and your frequent infirmities, I think is the way it reads. So there may have even been some of that as well. I don't really know. So a lot of things there. All right. Here's a math problem. Paul's second journey took place in 50. That's when he picked up Timothy. So let's just pick the 50 for round numbers. Paul came through and picked up Timothy at Lystra in 50. His second imprisonment began in about 67 AD, let's just say, all right, and ended in 68, so around 67. How old was Timothy at the writing of the second letter to him? Don't y'all love word problems? Okay, there's a missing piece of data, which is how old was Timothy when Paul picked him up, right? And let's make him a teenager. You think he was much older than that? About 30, yeah. I think that's a real good estimate. He's a young man for sure. And even in 1 Timothy, he says, let no man despise your youth. Well, that was years earlier. But then in 2 Timothy, he says, flee youthful lust. What's going on there? Is he not growing up? No, I think he's just a young man, especially compared to Paul. Yeah, okay. Okay, so here's your assignment, and you can kind of look at page... I think I actually had a more detailed version of it on page 2 at the top, but maybe... yeah, but anyway, here's what I want you to do. I'd like you to, and this will be the final result, if you just fill out this form right here, you see that form called the class planning worksheet? Thank you. There's a blank one there, is that right? On page 10, or is it?
Page 10.
Okay, the assignment, great. And you can be working on this. When we go on the break, and even after we come back, I may not teach for a little bit, so you can begin to work on. If you want to form teams or pairs, that would be great. I think that's a great benefit in that. But anyway, I just want you to fill that in. As you're doing it and thinking about what am I going to do with my time in the class, you might want to think about, you know what, I'll probably need a map for that. You might note that. Or you might need a timeline, or you might need some definitions or something like that. Or I might have an overhead or a visual or a bulletin board or a coloring sheet or something that I'm thinking about that will reinforce this with some visual cues. And so you might, even in your own mind, sketch out what that might be. But really, if you fill out that, that's fine. And I hope some of you will be brave enough to read to us, what are the life-changing goals? All right, now for this, we're just going to have a life-changing goal in the lesson itself. All right, these are not measurable, but, right, but just about 2 Timothy 2. Then a few specific learning objectives, measurable changes that can occur during the class period. And then mention some activities that are used. Something might include lecturing. That's what I'm doing right now. But it could include some other things. Think, pair, share is an easy one to do, or to write down. Okay. So do that, and then in concept only. All right, let's see. Yes, we can do it before time's up. All right, I have 8 minutes. We're going to learn the content of all the chapters in 1 and 2 Timothy. Would you do that with me? All right. Is that possible? I don't know. Let's just try. I'm being silly. I'm just fired up. That's all that happens, and so I got silly. But okay, here's some easy answers. First chapter of 1 Timothy is going to be the initial charge. Initial charge. That means, how does he start out? And by the way, the charge is something that was given to Paul. Oh, I'm taking too much extra time. Just remember, it's initial charge, right? And you'll never guess what the last chapter of 2 Timothy is going to be. Man. Y'all are good. So we've already learned 2. Those are easy, right? Initial charge. Now, starting in chapter 2, all the way through the rest of 1 Timothy, there are pairs. And they'll be easy to remember because they're in pairs. So chapter 2, what would you guess? And these are very summary things. Men and women. See, you guys, yeah. And then what do you think chapter 3 might be? First Timothy 3. Elders and deacons. Easy. This is easy. And then chapter 4. That's a little harder. I had to twist it to make a pair out of it. But chapter 4, similar to 2 Timothy 3, which, by the way, the numbers add up to 5. 2 Timothy 3 and 1 Timothy 4 are about false teaching, perilous times, or something like that. So this is false and true. By true, I mean people like Timothy, right? Who are good teachers. And Timothy, you are not like these. You're going to develop yourself. You're going to be a good guy. So false and true. Chapter 5, you could probably guess what that is. At least one of those. What's chapter 5 about? Widows. And I just put others. Like including elders that sin, for example, things like that. Y'all okay with that? Learning them? If you're writing them down, you're probably getting extra memory bonus points. Yeah. And chapter 6. Yes, rich? Good idea. Except which comes first? Who's address? Part? Yes, but in particular, it seems to be aimed for the most part at money. And some people don't have it and wish they had it, desire to be rich, and other people have it and are high-minded about it. So would you buy this? Poor and rich? Not rich and poor, but poor and rich. You get that? So it's about money. All right, you with me on that? All right, 1 Timothy 1. We've kind of already addressed this. Paul begins by saying, doesn't give us a fear of fearfulness, don't be ashamed, or so on. So I'm going to say, he's saying to Timothy, hold on and not ashamed, or something like that. Is that the same thing? Yeah, hold on and not ashamed. That's right. So he's saying, basically, and he gives an example of, is it Epaphras? I can't remember those multi-syllable guys there, but he's not ashamed of me and of my chains. Don't be ashamed of my chains. The idea is, yes, I'm a prisoner, and I'm your father in the faith. Don't let that discourage you. Hold on. That's the idea. And then images of God's workers, that's our chapter, and there's all kinds of images. Give me two of them. A farmer, soldier, athlete. There's three more we'll learn. Chapter 3. Now remember I said 1 Timothy 4 and 2 Timothy 3, they're kind of similar. So I call this perilous times. It's the way it begins. There are other words for that. For me, it's just saying, hey, things are going to get bad, going to get worse. And then at the end of the chapter, he says the answer is Scripture. But if you just remember perilous times, that's great. He ends by saying, so therefore, you abide in the things that you've learned, knowing from whom you've learned them and all that. So, and then finally, you'll never guess 2 Timothy 4? Final charge. Okay, great. All right. You got them all down. Now I'm going to do this. I got 5 more minutes in my time budget for learning these. Let's see if we can do this. So don't shout them out right away. I want you to, let's count to 5 so everybody can kind of in their head try to make a guess at it. Are you good with that? I spent a lot of money on these flashcards. They're actually just typing paper folded, but okay. My point is you can make them easily. What is this? Okay, let's give it a pause. Okay, don't say it. Now we're into the pairs, remember? Don't say it. Okay. What? Thank you. Yeah, I'm not giving you the signal, am I? I should do this, and then we'll wait. Okay, chapter 4. We're still in pairs. Remember that? Hold up. Hold up. All right, what? What's that? False and true. Yes. Okay. I didn't hear the. Okay. And you can make up any of these, but you kind of get the idea. They'll help you remember stuff. And what this one right here, chapter 5. Pair again. Okay. Widows and others. Great. And then chapter 6, another kind of reversal there. Yeah, poor and rich. I'm running short of my time budget here. Now I'm into chapter 1 of 2 Timothy, I hope, yes. Which is what? What is it? I'm sorry. Okay. All right, now you can say. What is it? Not afraid, not ashamed. Hold on, not ashamed. Right. I should be showing. Am I been showing the answers? I'm sorry. I see them. Could you see them? All right. Chapter 2, that's our chapter. What is it? Great. Images. And chapter 3, which 2 Timothy 3 matches 1 Timothy 4, which is what? Perilous times. Thank you. And then you'll never guess this one. Yes, final charge. All right. Okay, I hate to do this to you. I got another minute or two. Let's do them this way. Let's do this. Hold on, not ashamed. 2 Timothy 1. What's this one? Poor and rich. 6. What's this one? 2 Timothy 4. There's 4 chapters. Yes, thank you. This one, perilous times. Good. Matches the 1 Timothy 4, which, 1 Timothy 4 says in the latter time men will come, and it says a bunch of things about their false doctrine, lovers of self, all that kind of thing. Okay, what's this one? Images of God's workers. Yeah. That's our chapter. This one is elders and deacons. Yeah. Men and women. Yeah. This one. Yeah, 1 Timothy 5. I should be showing the right answers. I think there's a visual confirmation and maybe that makes it better there. Now I've jumbled them up, but I'm almost out of time. False teachers and godly men, or false and true, if you want to call it. Yes, 1 Timothy 4, where it adds up. All right. So if I was to quote a passage of Scripture, like those that are minded to be rich will fall into numerous snares, what chapter would that be in? Yes, 1 Timothy 6. You can kind of see that. What if I quoted one that said, let's see. I permit not a woman to teach or have authority over a man. Where would that be? 1 Timothy 2. Good. I'm trying to think of another one that I can think of right this minute. For the hard-working farmer must be the first to partake of his fruits or his harvest. 2 Timothy 2. You see a value in doing this, even with two-word definitions. And I'm at 2:31, which means it took 11 minutes. That's pretty good, right? I mean, there are many exercises in when you do them in a class, some activity, and they take more time by far than just a lecture, right? But memorization's an interesting thing. I think little tools like this, and there probably are computer versions and other ways to do it, they're very efficient. I'm kind of always shocked that, when I look at the clock, we only did this in 5 minutes, and everybody's kind of getting the answers. At least I think they are based on what we're doing. But that was just another illustration, a meta. Is this inappropriate for an adult class? I said inappropriate, but I think you heard appropriate. I hope you were saying, yes, it's appropriate. Yeah, I think so. And they're reusable besides that. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. I think that's all I was going to do. Yes, let's break. Let's stretch our legs and do all that and try to be back in 10 or 15 minutes. And I would like you to 2:45, I'd like you to go ahead and start on this exercise. You know what I mean? There's a blank planning sheet on page, whoever my page counter is. Thank you, yes. You can start filling that in and, yeah.